welcome to this third annual NFL Draft Reaction edition of the BCS podcast. I'm going to be summing up all of the headlines from this year's draft, and we'll also be hearing from fans of a number of teams on how they think their team's drafts went. Round 1 started on Thursday as we expect it to, with the Las Vegas Raiders selecting quarterback Fernando Mendoza from the University of Indiana with the number 1 draft pick. Las Vegas should be a good landing spot for Mendoza, given that the Raiders now have a very quarterback-friendly head coach in Clint Kubiak, who's coming off a Super Bowl win with the Seahawks, and they also have Kirk Cousins in place as a quarterback who has already indicated in his interviews that he knows the assignment and will be very happy to teach Mendoza how to marshal an NFL offense. Speaking of quarterbacks, the biggest headline of round 1 was that the Los Angeles Rams selected quarterback Ty Simpson from the University of Alabama with the 13th pick. Simpson was expected to only go in the second round, and so it did raise some eyebrows that he went so early. If Los Angeles Rams GM Les Snead is confident that Ty Simpson can be the guy, then it makes sense for the Rams to start succession planning now, given that quarterback Matt Stafford is 38 years old and indications show that he might only play for 1 or 2 more seasons. If Les Snead is happy to give Ty Simpson a first round draftee salary to sit on that bench and learn from Stafford and learn how to marshal an NFL offense, let him do that then, because it's not going to be clear whether this draft pick has paid off or not until 2028 or maybe even later then. Elsewhere in round 1, the New York Jets were highly visible, making 3 selections in the first round. Texas Tech edge rusher David Bailey went to the Jets with the 2nd pick in the draft. Tight end Kenyon Sadiq from the University of Oregon went with pick number 16, and wide receiver Omar Cooper Jr. from the University of Indiana went with pick number 30 before the Jets then addressed other needs in later rounds. For more on this, let's hear from Jets fan Ben Carter.
As with most drafts, it feels like certainly recently it was a big draft for the Jets, who came into it with plenty of draft ammo, but also plenty of holes on the roster to try and fill. And they went ahead and tried to address those needs. Obviously, first round, they had the 2nd overall pick. There was a lot of question marks about whether they'd go with David Bailey or Arvell Reese. They went with Bailey, the more proven pass rusher who led the FBS in sacks last year, over the more developmental but maybe higher upside Reese. I like this pick. Seems safer. I think the Jets, certainly Aaron Glenn, is kind of coaching for his job a little bit this year. They need pretty quick results to show that the team's moving in the right direction. Whilst it's painful to leave aside Reese when there's comparisons with guys like Micah Parsons, I think with Bailey, you know you're going to get a guy who disrupts the quarterback, who can be a big impact on the defensive line. The Jets needed that talented edge rusher. They now have one. Let's see how they can do in developing him. They then had the 16th overall pick, took Kenyon Sadiq, tight end. That was a bit of a surprise as well. I think we all assumed the Jets would go wide receiver there with a few good options on the board, but no, they went with tight end, who clearly was the higher ranked pass catcher on their board. Everything I've seen, he looks like a very exciting player. I think having a mismatch at tight end is always a great option as an offense. He runs fast, he's got great hands, he's dynamic in the passing game. So I like that pick. And then at the back of the first round, they traded back in and did take a wide receiver, took Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana, who again, another dynamic playmaker. They needed pass catchers to try and give this offense a boost around Garrett Wilson, and they found 2 in the first round who, as I say, let's see how they get used in this offense. But I think on paper, at least, you can't be upset with how that first round played out if you're a Jets fan. 3 top talents now under control for the next 5 years. And it's just up to the team now to make sure they get the most out of them. I'll be interested to see how they get used going into their rookie seasons, but excited about that. Day 2 was quieter for the Jets. They took D'Angelo Pons, was their only pick on day 2, the undersized cornerback from Indiana. Personally, love this. I don't watch a ton of college football, but I did watch some of the highlights from Indiana's, run to the national championship, and it felt like every time I put the highlights on, Pons was standing out, disrupting plays, forcing turnovers. Had a pick six in the semi-final, I believe, against Oregon. He's only 5'8", 5'9", so undersized for a corner. But who else was? Aaron Glenn. And that comparison got made a lot on draft night. A perfect guy to help coach him up. And I feel like, if you put aside the fact that he's smaller, then, on tape and in terms of what he provides, he shows up in a really big way. So that's an exciting pick. Day 3, they went ahead and addressed a few areas of depth. They took another guy on the offensive line at guard, who I think is helpful for depth, useful. And obviously they took Cade Klubnik at quarterback, who is a long shot. A year ago, he was seen as a guy who could be a first-round pick this year. Didn't go his way at Clemson over the last 12 months, but I don't hate him as a fourth-round pick. I think we all know that the Jets, their quarterback of the future is not on the roster at the moment. Geno Smith's got a chance now with the talent around him to have a nice year and set the Jets on the right course. But realistically, I think I'm going to be back here in 12 months' time telling you about the first-round quarterback the Jets take. I think they've set themselves up to select that QB of the future in 2027. And the goal really for this year in 2026 is to be competitive, not to be embarrassing, not to come dead last in the league as they did this year, but instead to put a pretty good product on the field, to win some games, to show that they have talent on this field that the right quarterback can come in, be successful at, kind of replicate what teams like the Bears have done in the past. So I'm not hugely optimistic about this year being the year it all turns around, but I do think there are signs they're starting to put talent in there. With the fire sale of Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, they need an injection of talent with these draft picks. They have 3 first-rounders in next year's draft as well. Let's just hope that they've got the right coaching staff, the right general manager in place, and that things are starting to turn for the better. So fingers crossed.
The other residents of MetLife Stadium, the New York Giants, in my opinion, had very good drafts in both 2024 and 2025, bringing in guys like Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter and Cam Sketibu to create a very good young foundation for new Giants head coach John Harbaugh to build this team upon. While I do personally question the wisdom of trading away a defender the calibre of Dexter Lawrence to the Cincinnati Bengals, the Giants did use their number 5 draft pick to bring in edge rusher Arvell Reese from Ohio State before using the number 10 draft pick that they got from Cincinnati Bengals in the Lawrence trade to bring in offensive tackle from Miami, Francis Mauigoa. For more on this and for what the Giants did in the later rounds, let's head over to Long Island, New York to hear from Giants fan and British expat Ross Worsley.
Arvell Reese was a top 3 pick that we got at number 5, absolute steal. Addressed every need. Trade with Cincinnati worked out better for us. We're going to be so much better next year with John Harbaugh. We're going to watch out for the Giants. Eagles are in shambles. Washington are relying on a New Jersey. It's not going to work for them. Cowboys are going to be garbage again. We're going to win the East. We got the best squad. You better watch out. You heard it here first.
After the Arizona Cardinals took much-loved running back Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame with the 3rd pick in the draft, the Tennessee Titans used the 4th pick to get wide receiver Carnell Tate from Ohio State, giving last year's number 1 draft pick quarterback Cam Ward an additional offensive weapon to throw to. For more on this, Tennessee Titans season ticket holder and friend of the show Shane Jones sent me his thoughts on all of the Titans draft picks, which will be voiced by an AI voice generator.
Let's be honest, the Titans still have a lot of areas to address. Taking Carnell Tate at number 4 felt like a bit of a stretch. I think most people, myself included, along with local media, expected Arvell Reese there. And if things had fallen differently, Jeremiah Love was the dream scenario, but the Cardinals grabbed him. At the end of the day, it feels like new offensive coordinator Brian Daboll made it clear. Give me a true playmaker for Cam, and I'll build you a solid offense in the next 1 to 2 years. Carnell Tate fits that mold. A lot of analysts even had him as the top receiver in the draft, so it's hard to call it a bad pick. Falk and Anthony Hill Jr. were also strong additions. The offensive line got some much-needed attention, and I think Carmona in the 5th round has a real shot to start at right guard right away. Pat Cloven in the 6th round could end up being a steal. The Singleton pick at running back was interesting, especially with Spears and Pollard already in the room. It didn't make a ton of sense to me, but I've definitely seen worse value picks in that range. Overall, this might be one of the better drafts we've had in the last 5 years. New logo, new stadium, and now it's about building toward 2030 when the Super Bowl comes to Nashville.
The Kansas City Chiefs, meanwhile, entered this year's draft with the 6th overall pick following a disappointing 2025 season where they missed the playoffs entirely. In addition, it is also very likely that they will start with Justin Fields under centre following the torn ACL and LCL that franchise quarterback Patrick Mahomes suffered late in the 2025 regular season. It is important then that the Chiefs address some of the quality and depth issues that they suffered from last season. To find out whether she thinks that the Chiefs did this or not in the draft, let's hear from Chiefs fan and friend of the show, Mimi Febo.
Pretty happy actually with the way the Chiefs draft went. They traded up in round 1 to get Mansour Delane. I think that's, we really need a cornerback because we couldn't pay Trent McDuffie. And I think we've kind of been hurting a little bit since Snead went as well. So I think that's going to be, really good. And although it's quite controversial in Chiefs Kingdom always wants, more offense, more tackles, more guards, more weapons. But I think it's a really good move, actually. What I think is interesting is we took quite a lot of DBs in one way or another, edges, a defensive tackle, and all these guys are a bit leaner and quicker than Spag's usual picks. And I think that's as a result of what we saw during the Super Bowl, which was a real kind of masterclass in how the defensive schemes are changing to more athletic bodies. Not to say that somebody like Chris Jones isn't athletic, but those leaner, smaller, more agile, faster. And then towards the end of the draft, we picked up, a WR, we picked up a QB. Always could use a really good QB in the room, and I suppose it's time to start giving Mahomes better understudies as he ages. Although I think he's going to be our franchise quarterback for a considerable amount of time going forward.
Other teams were also active in this year's draft, including some teams who are hoping to contend for the Super Bowl 61 title and other teams who are starting anew. Here are some other friends of the show with how they think their teams got on.
Hi, I'm Brett and I am a Buffalo Bills fan, and here are some of my thoughts on the Bills draft class this year. If I start with the Bills' first pick that they made in this year's draft, I would say that actually happened back in March when the Bills traded away their 2nd round pick to the Chicago Bears for wide receiver DJ Moore. Wide receiver was a clear area of need for the Bills coming into this offseason. It was arguably a need coming into last offseason as well. They rather famously now didn't draft a receiver in last year's draft. Their GM then went on local Buffalo Talk Radio, doubled down on that approach, saying that wide receiver wasn't a position of need and there were more important things to target. And then it turned out that wide receiver was a problem for the Bills all year long. So this year, rather than wait to get to draft day itself and target a receiver, the Bills felt it was worth the price of a number 2 pick to get DJ Moore in. He's someone who they believe can make contributions right away, possibly even be the Bills' number 1 receiver right away. And given that they're very much in a win-now mode, coming off of multiple consecutive playoff appearances, it's something that makes sense to get somebody who they believe can contribute right away. So originally the Bills were due to pick late in the 1st round with the 26th pick overall. They ended up trading down 9 spots to number 35, got arguably the same player that they would have taken in the 1st round, but they were able to improve their draft position for the remainder of draft and also get back another 2nd round pick after having traded that pick for more previously. So in addition to getting TJ Parker as an edge rusher with their first round pick, they also brought in a safety, a cornerback, and perhaps very importantly, a potential inside linebacker. That's a position where the Bills look like they might be a little bit weak now. The linebackers they had previously were really more of a fit for the scheme that they ran under McDermott. Now that they've got a new scheme, they're going to need a little bit different style linebacker.
Just going to go through the Falcons draft with you. So first of all, we had Avion Terrell in the second round. Really good pick. Big fan of this. We obviously needed corner help. We need help everywhere. But that corner position's really good for us. And do you know what? Having AJ Terrell's brother is going to be a lot of fun. The draft video, very cute. Really nice thing to do. I think it's going to push both of their levels of play up. So big fan of this. Would like to have had Jeremy Bernard there, but picked just one before by the Steelers. Bit of a shame, but you know what, Avion Terrell's a pretty good second place. Even so, we addressed wide receiver next pick, Zachariah Branch, fantastic pick again. Being a Falcons fan, I also watch a lot of Georgia football, and he was electric, absolutely electric. Bit of a screen merchant, but to be honest, you could have him as a proper wide receiver, and he'd be all absolutely fine. Fourth round, we have Kendall Daniels. Kendall Daniels is a good player out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a good school, and they've produced really, really strong defenders. Daniels is a bit of a tweener. He's a safety / linebacker prospect, so it could go either way. It looked like Matt was really excited in the draft room to have him. We traded down in the fourth, and so it looks like he was wanting him at his original spot in the fourth, traded down, still got him. So if Matt's happy, I'm happy. I trust him to the end of the world. Antonio Washington was the next pick. Antonio Thompson out of Washington. He is a bit of a project. He's quite raw, great athleticism, great intangibles. The sort of kid that could help on the line, but to be honest, weirdly, and this is the first time in about 20 years, our defense should be good. Depends on James Pierce, but hopefully, if we play like we did last time, 5th in sacks in the league, around 5th, maybe 4th, then I think we should be absolutely fine. So Antonio can just sort of learn behind some of the older tackles. Where we are weak on the defense is that defensive line, so it is the defensive tackles specifically. So it'd be nice maybe to have a bit more depth there, but if he comes along, great. If he doesn't, 6th round pick, what are we going to do? That said, Harold Perkins Jr. in the 6th round could turn out to be the steal of the draft. This guy is a guy who in 2022 and 2023 was fantastic. Really strong defender, impact defender for LSU. Mocked highly back then, thinking he would come out early. But he ended up tearing his ACL in 2024, stayed another year, wasn't quite as good, slipped to the 6th. If he can regain that form he had in his first couple of years of his career, he could be an absolute game wrecker. And at linebacker is where we need some extra help. Caden Ellis went back to the Saints in free agency. Terrible. So if Perkins can step up and be a really good contributor, that would be amazing. Final pick, 7th rounder, Ethan Onianawa. Fine, very hard to know really. He's a total project. All the size and weight that you need. He was a 4-year starter at Rice and then went to OSU, Ohio State, for the final year. If he develops into a swing tackle, amazing. Again, 7th rounder. You take the chance on the upside. Hope you can coach him up, but not expecting too much. So I think it was a decent draft, especially coming in with no 1st round pick. Gained an extra pick there by trading back. Still got an impact wide out in Zachariah Branch. Got a couple of good projects. It's one of those drafts we might look back on and say, okay, none of them are playing for us ever. Or it could be one where we say, well, we got a steal in the 6th, we got a steal in the 3rd, we got a steal in the 2nd. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic. I obviously trust implicitly Matt Ryan. Everything he says, does. Beautiful man. We love him. And I'm looking forward to his first season with him at the helm.
Last but not least, there was my team, the New England Patriots. The Pats' draft preparations were overshadowed in the run-up by the multiple stories involving head coach Mike Vrabel and the journalist Dianna Russini, now formerly of The Athletic. One thing I will say, even as a Patriots fan, is that allegations of infidelity arise between two high-profile professionals, and it's the woman who has to resign from her job rather than the man. Not that I want Coach Vrabel to resign from the Patriots, of course, but that is a wider societal issue that really does need to be discussed extensively rather than lurid tickle tackle that is accompanied by multiple photos that publications like the New York Post and others had published in recent weeks. Coming back to the draft, the Patriots addressed multiple needs. Most notably, we traded up in the first round so that we could bring in offensive tackle Caleb Lomu with the 28th pick. This was much needed. If there is one thing that defeat in Super Bowl 60 shows, it's that while our offensive line was better last season, not that that was necessarily difficult given how bad it was in 2023 and 24, we still needed additional depth and quality on that O-line for when guys like Jared Wilson and Will Campbell get injured. In the later rounds, we then brought in the edge Gabe Jacobs and the tight end Eli Raridan before in later rounds bringing in additional defenders and then ending the draft by bringing in a quarterback in Byron Morton and a running back in Jam Miller, who I think could be quite a good steal given that we got him in the much later rounds on the last day of the draft. All in all then, I'm very happy with what we've done in this year's draft, particularly given that we've also brought in guys like Kevin Byers, KJ Britt and Romeo Dobbs in free agency to address the free agents that we've lost. One thing that I was very clear on following last year's draft is that the Patriots are very purposeful in who they bring in the draft, and this is also true of the undrafted free agents like Ep43 that we bring in following the draft as well. So while maybe not everyone that we've selected this year will work out, I'm confident that we have done our research and we knew exactly who we wanted to bring in, and that's why we performed so many trades during this year's draft so that we could get the people that we were specifically targeting. Finally, let's hear from a number of our contributors on who they think won this year's draft.
In terms of who won the draft, it's really difficult, and of course only time will tell. But I think that some people had quite a scattergun approach, kind of like the Raiders were kind of getting all kinds of really good players, but I'm not sure that they can develop all those people in the current franchise that they've got going forward. I think the Browns, despite taking another quarterback, like that's what they really need, I think the Browns did quite well, partly because we gave them so many picks, but partly because they just seemed quite focused on what they wanted, and they seemed to be getting things that they really needed to fill holes.
That's it for this 2026 NFL Draft Reaction edition of the BCS podcast. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I certainly do hope to see you again next time. Bye bye now. The BCS podcast is written, produced, edited and hosted by me, Brett Walker. Thank you to Boban Apostolov and Pixabay for the use of the music and sound effects in this episode. This episode features contributions from Ben Carter, Charlie Deeks, Brett Griffin, Shane Jones, Dr. Mimi Febo and Ross Worsley.